I'm Sarah Jacobson. Good morning. I'm the Assistant Dean of Admissions and Enrolled Students at the Graduate School. Before Patrick Brandt gets into the real meat of helping you format your dissertations, I'm just going to give you a brief overview and some context from the graduate school side. Just a real quick question. I think Patrick usually does this. How many people are in the final stages of writing and are planning on graduating in 2022? Woo! Congratulations. For others, are you 2023 expected, beyond? All right. Well, any time is a great time to be here. So apologize that we're not in slideshow view here, but we're kind of trying to figure it out with the recording. Just some basics. These guidelines aren't arbitrary. I know it may feel that way at some points, but it's the university's way to brand the amazing work that's coming out of all of the research and all of the work that you all are doing. Our website has lots of resources for you, including our ETD guide and some FAQs and kind of walking you through the process, sample pages that I'll show you. Some helpful tips. Start using these resources as early as you can. We've found that it's much easier to sort of put the formatting in while you're writing than rather kind of racing at the end. Beware of templates. Some programs have templates that they pass down from student to student from year to year. The guide did change about 3 or 4 years ago to try and streamline the process for formatting and make it a little easier. We do see students who are still using the old guidelines because they're sort of being passed down in their program. So beware of those. They often have errors embedded in them, and then it's kind of difficult to go back and fix them. And then pay attention to your submission deadline. So for those of you, is anyone May 2022 grad expected? All right, congratulations. April 11th by 4 p.m. is the date you need to have this into to ProQuest. So that's very important. You might be right. I probably should have prepared that. We'll look at that too while we're here this morning. Thank you. So that deadline is a hard deadline. We have a little room at the 4 p.m., but it needs to be in. It does not need to be perfectly formatted. As good as it can be by that submission date is always preferred, but we'll go back and forth with you beyond that date. So it just needs to be submitted, and then we'll review it, and if there are any revisions needed, we'll send it back, and we can go back and forth until we get it all right. We have a deadline for that as well that I will also pull up because I don't have it memorized yet. Pretty soon these dates will be ingrained in my head, but I will look at that as well. Good question. So we'll go to our website and show you around a little bit. So from the graduate school's main page, there's a few ways to get here, but if you just type ETD in the search box, you can pull up a lot of these resources. This is the thesis and dissertation resource page, and then we have a full guide that goes through a lot of information here. Individual kind of components. We have some screenshots for you. So hopefully most of the questions that you have should be covered in this guide. It aims to be as comprehensive as possible. Go over things like copyrights. We also have sample pages. So these walk you through the first several pages of each document are meant to look the same from person to person. Obviously, once you get into your content, those will all be different, but these show you exactly what we're looking for. Kind of break down sort of the formatting with a lot of those common pages. So they can be really helpful. I mean, if you're using a 2-screen system, you can put your document up and say, okay, mine looks like this. We also share with you the checklist. This is what your reviewer at the graduate school will use when they're reviewing your document. So if you can check these boxes, you are in great shape. Before you submit it, if you want to just take a look at these, make sure you've sort of ticked everything here. You're good. This is exactly what we will use on our end when we're looking at your document. We also, on this main thesis and dissertation resource page, you can submit right through here. This is a link to ProQuest, and that'll walk you through that process. Kind of an outline of the stages, And then at the bottom of this page, we have some FAQs. These get into things that happen like post-submission, like if you've ordered hard copies of your document, you need to change your address, and can help you with some of those questions as well. Now, let's look at April 12th, winter, and then July 14th for August graduation. Any questions about this part of it? Awesome. These slides will be included, I think, when this is made available, but if you have questions, here are some resources too. Contacts in our office, these are the folks who actually will review your document, our handbook, and then a link to ProQuest as well. Awesome. I'll be over here if there are questions that involve my side, and thank you all.
Thank you, Sarah. All right. Well, hey, everybody. I'm Patrick Brandt. I'm the Director of Career Development and Outreach in the Office of Biomedical Graduate Education. So I work with the life science PhD students generally. But today we're going to be talking about a theme that, of course, spans the disciplines, and that's how to use Word to format your dissertation. So all of you should have gotten an email from me with a practice file in it. Did anybody not get that email last night? I can forward it to you quickly now, or somebody at your table could forward it to you. Say everybody got it. Okay, good. So I'm just going to close this. And make sure we're still recording. Yep, good. And then we're going to go to here. All right, get my notes. Okay, so today is designed for Mac users. It looks like most everybody's got a Mac, but I have the instructions for PC too, if you happen to have a PC. And so there are two handouts today. One of them is instructions for orienting page numbers on landscape pages, and it's a two-sided thing. The only difference is that one is for Word 2016 and one is for Word 2011. So probably most of you are using 2016 or later, and so you'll want to just focus on what side of the page you're looking at. We're going to go through these steps one by one when we get to it. The other handout is creating automatically updated tables of contents, and that is very similar for both PC and Mac, but in parentheses are the instructions. If there are any changes for Mac users, those instructions are in parentheses at the end of each section. But first we're going to start off, so hopefully you've got this file opened up. When you opened it up, it probably didn't have the paragraph editing characters. So we're going to talk a little bit, we're going to start off nice and slowly with things that you probably already know how to do. And then we're going to go into some of these more complicated formatting things that are often issues that could get your dissertation sent back from the graduate school when you submit it. So I'd like you to be able to go through with me step by step, practicing right along with me. This recording will be made available, so if you do get far behind, if you get behind, that's okay. On the other hand, if you want me to slow down or if you have a question, and quite often what happens is somebody says, my menu doesn't look exactly the same as your menu. Where do I find the thing that you're trying to do? And so usually that's the case that somebody else in the classroom probably is having the same issue. So please raise your hand if you don't see something that looks like it does on the screen up in front. Does that sound good? Okay, so one of the things that's going to come very handy for you is this show and hide editing or paragraph markings. And so it's a backwards looking P. When you click on that, it'll show where line breaks are, where page breaks are. It'll also show you when you have a page break versus a section break. And so if you don't have that selected, it's invisible and you can't tell if it's a section break or a page break, which makes a big difference when you're using page numbering especially. So for today, and whenever you're doing formatting, you're probably going to want to keep that visible all the time. All right, the other thing that is going to be really helpful today, and also when you're developing your a large document like this, is to view the navigation pane. So if you click on View here, and then it'll bring up this menu, which has Navigation Pane as an option. And when you open the Navigation Pane, you get something on the left-hand side here that has a few different options. This is just the different pages, so you can scroll down through. That's not quite as helpful as this next one, which is the outline. And so it'll be easy to jump from one chapter or one section to another today if you have this navigation pane open and using the document map or the outline. We'll talk about how you get things to show up here a little bit later. All right. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, let me go back here to Dissertation Guide. You'll see that the sample pages often call for very specific margins. So what I would suggest that you do is create a document that has 1-inch margins all the way around, and then there are going to be some pages where you have to add an extra inch. So let me go back to the Word. So if I were to click on Design, or excuse me, I think it's on Layout. Yeah, Margins. So we can click on Custom Margins just to make sure what we are. So this document has 1-inch margins all the way around. Now, when I did, so this is a truncated version of my own dissertation. And so when I did it, I just kind of guessed at how many enters were needed to be 1 inch. That doesn't usually fly though, because I think that when they look at your dissertation in the grad school, they are actually going to be measuring to make sure that it's correct. And so there's a much better way to do this, and that is to make a table and create a cell that's exactly 1 inch high. So to do that, the easiest way to do that is to just have one enter right here. And then we're going to go to Insert, Table, and we're just going to be a 1-by-1 table. Now once that's there, we can actually delete this, and then we can, let's see, I think it's under Table Design, or Table Design or Layout, one of those two is going to give you an option about, here it is, so the height, it's under Layout, and the height, we want this to be exactly 1 inch. So now we have 1 inch from our margins as defined in our layout, and then we have an extra inch right here. Now, you don't want to have that box around everything, this border around that box. So to get rid of that, you just come to the home screen and then choose this window thing. This is the same as if you were working in Excel and wanted to put like a border around some cells in Excel. And we're going to click on no border at all. So now it's an invisible box that's an extra inch. And any of the pages that require that extra inch, like your title page and your abstract and your whatever these other ones are, many of them in what we call the 4 pages of the document, F-O-R-E, they require that extra 2 inches. And again, on the checklist, it'll tell you section by section whether it has to have that 2-inch margin or not. So this is going to be your friend for sure. All right. Now, coming back here, if you want to be able to copy and paste this into place, Command C to copy it. Then if I wanted to go down here to the next page where I need to have a bigger section, and if you just do a Command Paste, it's going to just paste it as it's not going to paste it as a cell by default. So instead, it'll give you the options to display as text or display as table. And now you've got that extra inch if you use display as table. And the other thing that you might want to do when you're first doing this, you might want to actually keep the borders so that you can remember where you've done that and not, and then you can go through in the 8 or 10 places that you'll have to add that extra box. And to get that, to get the, yeah. So if this was just a line break, then what I would do would go to Insert, Table, and then just do a 1-by-1 table. To select the 1 inch, then you do a right click. Oh, actually, no. You can do it from a right click too, but for some reason my computer is not enabling the right click. So you can go to Layout. So once you're in the table, so here, let me show you from the beginning. When you're not in the table, your ribbon doesn't include the things that you need. So you have to click in here, and then the Table Design and Layout tab show up, and you want to choose the Layout tab and change the height to be 1 inch. Does that answer your question? Awesome. Okay. Any other questions?
How do you make the margin for like different margin for different pages? I mean, when I do it, I set for all the pages the same.
Yeah, I just set it for all the pages. Yeah, and there are ways that you can, I think, change. Actually, I don't know that you can. Yeah, okay, so you can apply margins to the whole document like I have it set up here, or you can do different sections as well. But I would just make sure that the whole document is selected and just make it 1 inch all the way around, because that's going to be the requirement for the vast majority of the document. Great question. Any other questions? That's right. So, yep, you need to delete this one. Excellent point. Yeah, so that you've got your 1 inch here, and then 1 inch only, and no extra line breaks. All right. Any other questions about that? Okay, let's talk about page numbering. So, the page numbering is unique and also very specific. So if we go back to the example pages, you'll see that on your title page, there is no page number 1. But it counts as page number 1. So if I go down to the bottom of page number 2, I have a lowercase Roman numeral 2. And then that continues through all of the pages that are before chapter 1. So once you get to chapter 1, so see we're still having lowercase Roman numerals all the way through here. And once we get to chapter 1, or in this case, well, let's see. Oh, here's chapter 1. So chapter 1, the first page of chapter 1 has an Arabic numeral 1. So let's go back and practice a little bit of this. To insert page numbers, you need to double-click into the footer of the document. So by double-clicking there, I enter the header and footer tab. I can click on page number. If I click on page number here, it gives me options of where I want it to be aligned. I want it to be, and since I'm already in the footer, it knows that I want it to be on the bottom, and I want it to be in the center. Now here's where you can select that you don't want the page number to appear on the first page. So I'm going to deselect that button. And then to choose the type, Roman numerals or Arabic numerals, uppercase, lowercase, you go to the Format button. And the number format, we want lowercase Roman numerals. Now in this case, we're working on the 4 pages of the document, and so that is the first section. So we could either say continue from previous section or not, right? Because it's the very first section. So we're going to click on OK. OK again. All right, here's our title page. No number there. That's good. Here's our second page, and it starts with number 2. All right, so now if we go down to chapter 1 by clicking on the document map, let's see what we've got going on down here. All right, we have an issue that this didn't start over, and it's still lowercase Arabic or lowercase Roman numerals. So we've got page XIV. I'm not sure why it's so hard to read that. So that's number 14, I think. And so this should read number 1. So what we're going to do first is confirm. So the reason that happened is because we have a page break at the end of the 4 pages instead of a section break. So what we're going to do is, this is now a good spot to talk about the difference between page breaks and section breaks. Page breaks are what you would use if you want to bump down to the next page without pressing enter a whole bunch of times. And section breaks are the same thing, but it's going to denote that you're going to have different kind of formatting in your document. And so I can never remember exactly where they are from Word or from PC to. All right, looks like in the Mac world, the section breaks and page breaks are under the Layout tab. And so with my cursor right here next to the page break, and I can either delete that page break and put a section break there, or Command Z, I can also just put a section break right after this page break too. So I'm going to click on Layout, Breaks, and we have either page break or column break. Usually we won't use a column break because most of you are not going to be using double columns in your dissertation. The grad school doesn't suggest that. But you'll be using a section break. And almost always you're going to use a section break that goes to the next page. These other ones don't really have to worry about them in my experience, especially with dissertations. So if I click on here to put a section break, then what it does is it bounces me down to the next page, but it does always add an extra line break. And usually you don't want that extra line break. So I'm going to delete that line break. And now we have the sections are split. We still have an XIV here, lowercase 14. And now look what happened. Now it thinks that we're going back to the beginning. And so it has removed the page numbering from the first page of this section. And we still have a wonky numerals for down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click into the footer in this new section that we've created. And I'm going to go to page number. And I'm going to format the page numbers. Now instead of lowercase Roman numeral, we want Arabic numerals. We don't want to continue from the previous section. We want to start at number 1. And we also want to, so the page number still is not showing up. I think we've fixed a couple of problems. So now it's number 2, so that's good. And number 3. That's good, but we don't have the page number on the first page, which they do want. Except the only page that doesn't get a page number is the title page. So to get the number to appear at the bottom of page 1 of chapter 1, I believe that you just deselect the different first page button that's in the header and footer tab. Everybody doing okay so far? Does your menu basically look the same as what you're seeing on the screen, or is it different?
I have to starting chapter page 1. Unlike the dissertation title, I maybe selected not to show the 1.
I see. All right.
You did have to click 1.
So you did that. Okay, you went to here. Okay, got it. All right. So that's another way you can also do it. All right. How's everybody? Yes. So the only reason to do a section break here instead of a page break is so that the page numbering so that you can change the page numbering format. Yep. And I believe you should only have to do that once, because in chapter 2, you don't start back at number 1. It's, if the last page of chapter 1 is number 65, then you're going to go to 66 for chapter 2. So, any other questions? That's a good question. I think that, so if we tried to delete that, I'm not sure what would happen. Oh, interesting. It put it down. Good observation. So there is, so we'd have to see, so on the dissertation example pages, it defines that that page number has to be ½ an inch from the margin, or from the edge of the page. So that's a great question. Here, I'm going to do a Command Z to see where it was before. I'm not sure if they would get the ruler out for that one, but they might, and it looks like probably the correct thing would to not have that there. And if I do it in, but yeah, it looks like if you do it in one part of the header, of one section of the header, it'll change it in the entire footer for that whole section. So yes, I'm glad you brought that up. All right, any other questions? Yes? On the title page? Okay. Let's see if it did that to me also. That's a good... Okay. It didn't do that for me, but some people's different versions of Word can be kind of wonky. What you can do is you can, from when you're in the header and footer tab, you can click on, you can navigate to different sections, and so you can click on previous. Looks like I already am in the first section footer. And then you might want to try just selecting different first page, or toggling that on and off, and see if that helps. Or you can just delete the page numbers from the 4 pages section and then redo it, because it may be that it's linked to the previous or linked to the next one, and so when you make a change in one section, it can propagate forward or backward. So give that a try and let me know if that works. The page numbering can be really frustrating sometimes. Okay. All right. Let me. I'm going to pause the. All right. Okay. So we have a question from one of the participants here who pointed out that the dissertation guidelines has really, if we go to the table here, we're supposed to have 2 inches above the title. Sometimes your title is really long, right? And then you're supposed to have an inch here, an inch here, an inch here, an inch here. And what if you have a lot of people on your committee, or you have somebody whose name is really long? Then sometimes there's not enough space in order to be able to have the 1 inch margin down here. And so one of the students, one of their committee members was down on the first page. And when we've asked this question of Sarah in the past, and I'm glad she's here and she can confirm, but she has said that, or the grad school has said that it's okay to decrease these distances here so that all the committee members fit on the first page. And so Sarah's saying yes, that's okay to do. But if we were going to choose which ones to decrease, it would not be the one at the very top, though, right? No. It would only be the stuff like in before and after Chapel Hill 2000. Yep. Great. Okay. To reduce the font? Yeah, the grad school requires that there be, I think, a minimum of 10-point font or something like that.
I recommend reducing slightly the space between some of the sort of sections and keeping the font consistent throughout. If that doesn't work, let me know. Okay. Is it not easy to do with a lot of committee members? Yeah, I feel like thank you for your use of margins in between the statement and the Chapel Hill and the next people. Easy to mess with those
Okay. Yep, good. All right, great questions. Okay, we're going to move ahead now. We're going to talk about the first, let's see. Oh, and I did also want to point out that the idea of using this of this block right here is not my own. That was from a student a number of years ago named Oren Abelez, and so I just want to give him credit for that because it makes it a lot easier than the way I used to teach it, which was using different font sizes and it was not. This is a better way to do it. Okay. So to exit the header and footer, you can either click on close header and footer, or you can just click outside of the header and footer so that you're in the main part of the document. And what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about instructions for orienting page numbers on landscape pages. So if you scroll down in this document into Chapter 1, you'll see that there's a table. And let's see, what page is it on? Okay, here's this table, and it is on page 8 if you've been able to create the numbering in the same way that I have. And I'm going to make this whole thing a little bit smaller so you can see what's happening. So everything looks good on the page on page 7 and on page 9 as far as margins are concerned. But you'll see that this table doesn't fit the margins. And so what we want to do is, there's going to be some cases where you have a figure or a table that is really much better in a landscape if the page is in landscape view. And so we're going to go through and talk about that process right now. And so you're going to be using this first handout that says instructions for orienting page numbers on landscape pages. If I were just to click on this page and go to Layout, and then go click on Orientation and click on Landscape, what do you think would happen? Maybe you've tried this already. Say again? Yeah, every page in that section will turn to landscape. So what we have to do to preempt that is we just need to isolate the page or the pages that we're going to turn by using section breaks. So first I'm going to go to the end of page 7 and click on the Layout tab and choose a section break. That goes to the next page. Remember that whenever you click on that, it adds an extra line break, so we're going to delete that line break that is added. And then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to add a section break that goes to the next page there as well, and then delete that extra line break that was down here. So so that's steps number 1 and number 2. Now it says, step number 3 says, if page numbering starts back at number 1 after inserting the section breaks, you have to format the page numbers. And that is exactly what it did. So we've got 7. Now we're back at number 1. It's hard to see because it's actually what I can do just so that you can see what's going on. So it's a number 1. This is also number 1 because this is a new section too. So we have to fix the page numbering first. So I'm going to double click in the footer of page number 8, which should be page number 8. And I'm going to format page numbers, and I want to continue from the previous section. Click on OK. Now we've got number 8. Still got an issue down here. This started back at number 1, so I'm going to click there. Page number, format page numbers, and continue from the previous section. So now we're back at number 9. So page numbers are good. We need to do something else though when we are in the footer of the page that we're going to turn. And so that is described in step number 4. It says, while in footer view on the page that will be turned, deselect link to previous. So see how it says link to previous up here? We need to completely isolate this page from everything else because any changes that we do on this page that after we turn it are going to be propagated forward and backward. So we're going to deselect link to previous. And And then we need to, step number 5 says, repeat step 4 on the page immediately that follows the page that will be turned. So we need to go down here to page number 9 and see how it says same as previous there. We have to click into the footer and deselect link to previous. Otherwise, the changes that we make in the location of this page number will be propagated downward in the file. All right, so now that we have totally isolated page 8, we can close the header and the footer by either clicking on this button right here or just clicking outside of it, double clicking outside of it. And now we can go to Layout, Orientation, Landscape, and it only changes that page. Page numbering still looks good, 7, 8, 9 looks good, but the issue now is when you bind this or when you create a PDF that's going to turn this page, it's going to turn page number 8, and the grad school and ProQuest want the page numbers always to be in the bottom center of the page. And so this is now the bottom center of the page, not this. So we have to move this number 8 over to here. And you'd think it would be nice and easy, but it's not very easy. So the next few steps are showing how to do that. So, and I think it's also different depending on if you're using Word for Mac 2011 or 2016. And incidentally, if you're curious about what version you're using, you can click on Word, About Microsoft Word, and I believe it says in here somewhere. Well, it doesn't actually. It says what version. Oh, yeah. So I actually don't know what version like if it's 2016 or not. Anyway, that's how, if you were trying to compare with somebody next to you who's got a different menu structure, then you can do it that way. Okay. So step number 6 now. Oh, we already did that. Step number 7. Within the footer of the rotated page, select the page number such that it looks like it has the hashes on it. So I'm going to go into the footer, and we've got that anchor, and it doesn't actually look exactly like this with cross hashes, so it may, basically what you want to see is that anchor. And then we're going to Command X to cut the page, or to cut the page number, and then exit the footer. And then on the menu, we're going to select Insert, and we're going to go to Text Box, and we want a vertical text box. We're going to put the vertical text box over here, about where we want it to be. It doesn't have to be exact right now. So click and drag. Now in there, we're going to do a Command V to paste our number 8. Okay, so we're a lot closer, still not quite there yet, because there's a few issues. When we created the text box, it thought that we wanted it to have an outline around it. So we need to go to Home, and then select this border, and we're going to say no border. Oops, that didn't work. Let's see, what's the issue? All right, let's see what, maybe I have to go to shape format? Ah, here it is. Okay, here's the outline. So apparently this is considered not a cell, but a shape. Let's try this. Well, let's see. I'm flying. Oh, no outline. Thank you. There we go. Appreciate it. Okay. All right, so now we don't have an outline around it. And now we can move this to wherever we want it to be. You may find it easier to center it within that, and then unfortunately the Mac version of this makes it a little bit hard. You may have to use your ruler over here and move this text box until it's perfectly centered on that page. Oops, not like that. Actually, I think there was somebody who showed me Control click more. Oh yeah, here it is. Yep. So step number 10. Control click or right click anywhere on the text box, and you can go to more layout options. And I believe there's a way to center this exactly on the page. Yeah. Okay. On the position tab, change horizontal alignment to, let's see, alignment, left, relative to page. We'll see if this works. It's been a little while since I went through all of this. Vertical alignment will be centered relative to page. You may have to nudge the text box to the left so it doesn't interfere with the text on the page. Let's see. Okay, now we're going to click on OK. All right, so now supposedly that has put it exactly in the center. All right, so this should work again whether you have one page that you're turning or multiple pages that you're turning. And if you're doing this again in a different spot in this chapter or another chapter, you'd have to go through that same process. Did any of you, those of you that were following along, did you run into any roadblocks, or did that work smoothly? Fingers crossed? Good? All right, nice. Very good. Any questions then?
If my landscape table is very long, and then it will be okay, right?
Yeah, for example, like if this went on to a second page, depending on how you have your table set up, you might have to manually make a break in the table, and and you might have to put the headers onto the next page so that it's easy for the reader to understand what's in each column. But yeah, it would work the same way. Yep. All right. Any other questions? Great. Okay. What we're going to talk about next then is how to create automatically updating tables of contents, tables of figures. This is something that's required again by the graduate school. So if we go back to the example pages, you'll see a few things when we get down here to the table of contents. Number one, it's a pretty simple table of contents. There are no extra colors. It's black and white. You'll see that the page numbers are all right aligned, and it has these dots as tab leaders. You'll notice that the chapter titles and everything in the 4 pages are all caps. Subsections are not in caps. They're in sentence case, I guess that's called. And you'll also notice that you've got you have 3 levels of headings. So you've got chapter, subheading, and then a sub-subheading. You can use 3 levels if you want in your table of contents, but you don't have to. You only have to have at least 2 levels in your table of contents. That'll all make sense in just a moment more. Another thing I want to point out is that the table of contents doesn't point to anything that is before the table of contents in the document. So for example, this is the preface. The preface doesn't show up in the table of contents. And the table of contents doesn't show up in the table of contents either. The first thing is the list of tables, which is the next thing after the table of contents. That makes sense? So how do we do that? The key to doing that is by using heading styles when you're creating your document. You can do this as you're writing, or if you haven't done this, you can also retroactively go through and do this. So if I go to chapter 1, for example, and I click on, if I put my cursor in chapter 1, you'll see that it says heading number 1. If I go down to if I go to the first subheading and put my cursor there, this is heading style 2. And if I go to the main body or any paragraph, then this is no particular heading style. It's normal actually. Sometimes it's called body or normal. And so to see those extra styles, you can just click on this little arrow here. So headings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it goes way up. You're generally not going to use anything more than heading 1, 2, and maybe 3. All right, so that answers another question. How do you get stuff to appear in the document map? It appears over here because it's gathering things that have been marked with different heading styles. So I've done the same thing with the list of tables. So in this case, we've got a place here for the table of contents on page 11 or 10 of the document, excuse me. The list of tables starts on page 11. So that is marked with heading style 1. Everything that's before the table of contents, including the table of contents, don't mark it with heading style 1. Instead, just use bold centered. That's basically what heading style 1 is. It's bolded and it's centered. So now what we can do is we can put our cursor where we want the table of contents to appear. And now we're going step by step now in the next document. And so we're on step number 2. Place the cursor where you want the table of contents to appear. And then under the References tab, we're going to click on Table of Contents. And you have some different pre-edit or pre-formatted tables of contents. But we don't want to use any of those because see how they have italicized, they have different colors here. The table of contents that the grad school wants to see is just a very simple and plain table of contents. So we're going to click on Custom Table of Contents. When we do that, we get this little header or this preview, and it shows that heading style 1 is going to look like this. Anything with heading style 2 is going to look like this. Anything with heading style 3 is going to look like this. So we've already got the page numbers showing. So if I deselect these and select them, it changes the preview. We want to right align the page numbers. That's good. That's also what the grad school wants to see. And here's the tab leader. It's already, by default, it's the one that we want. It's those series of dots. So make sure that that's selected. So we'll talk about how to modify this in just a moment. Just store this in your memory banks for a moment. But we're just going to click on OK. And so it automatically created a table of contents based on all the different heading styles that I used. So if you've already written your entire dissertation, that's okay. If you haven't put heading styles, you can just go in and change all the things that you want to appear in your table of contents to heading style 1 or 2. And it may require a little bit of reformatting. I'll show you how you can change the style of the heading styles if you want to. If that's sometimes that's a question that people have. But you'll notice we have an issue. If you're following along with me, you may see that the heading style 1 things are not right aligned, the same as the others. That's an issue. And you'll also see that chapter 2 has a very long chapter title, and it is double spaced between the lines. And if we go back to the grad school's template, they say if any entry takes up more than one line, break up the entry about 3/4 of the way across the page and place the rest of the text on a second line, single spaced between the 2 lines. All right, so we can do that. It's not hard to make that change. So we're going to go back to Word. And to change that, what we need to do is, click anywhere. Oh, this is hyperlinked. I think all we need to do is go to Table of Contents, go to Custom Table of Contents again, and then, so this will work. So you're going to actually be overwriting the table of contents because there can only be one table of contents in the document at a time. What we're going to do is we're going to explore these two different, what happens when we click on Modify and Options. So let's do Options first. Options, so if there's another heading style that you prefer, do you have a question? Oh, okay. Yeah, great question. So the question is, how do you mark something as heading style 1? Okay, let me cancel out of here. We'll go down to chapter 1, and what you'd have to do is click on the font, or excuse me, the wording that you want to change, and then for me, it's on the Home tab. And so I could change this to heading style 2 or 1 or heading 1, or if I wanted to look at more options, I could do heading 6, and then it looks a little different, or that's how you would change it. Does that make sense?
So if it's the title, like what you have right here, chapter 1 introduction, you choose the normal one?
So,
Or which one would you choose?
so you would want to choose, if it's the chapter title, you would want to use heading 1.
Okay. And then 2, 3.
Yep. Yep. Because that'll define how it looks in the table of contents. All right, great question. Okay, so we're going to go up here to our table of contents, and we're going to go to references, table of contents, and we're going to click on custom table of contents. Now we're back to where we were before. Let's look at the options. So these are all of the available styles that are in your version of Word. And if we scroll down here, you'll see that heading style 1, 2, and 3 have been identified by default as table of contents level 1, 2, and 3. Say you didn't like the way heading style 1 looked and you wanted to go with heading style 2, 3, and 4 for the things. Then you could change this to, you could delete this, and you could change this to be 1, 2, and say you wanted a heading style 5 to be number 3. You could do that too. Then you'd click on OK. But since we're sticking with heading 1, 2, and 3, I'm going to reset this. And so that's going to redefine heading 1, 2, and 3 as TOC level 1, 2, and 3. So we click on OK. Now what we want to do is we want to modify. This is going to give us a chance to modify each of these table of content styles. So if you remember, if you can see kind of back here, things that were leveled with heading style 1 are TOC 1, and they had this incorrect tab leader. And you can actually, so if I click on TOC 1, it gives you a description over here, and it shows you, and again, I've been doing this workshop for like 7 years, and Word still hasn't fixed this issue that TOC 1 has an aberrant stop tab at 5.99 inches. It's like totally random. I don't know why. Maybe some of you have a version of Word where it's been fixed, but okay, good. Well, so maybe they finally fixed it. But if you're working in one where you have these issues, you just go to Modify, and then you choose TOC 1, click on Modify again, and then we can go to Format, Tabs. This is where we want to remove this tab stop. Or you could have just clicked on Clear All too. So we fixed one of the problems. The other problem, though, is that when there's a long title, it's not single spaced between. So what we want to do is go to Format so to fix that issue, we go to Format Paragraph, and here. So the hanging indent is okay. That's good actually. But what we want is there to be single spaced. But by single spacing it, it's going to also make it so. Well, here, let me show you what happens when we click on single space, but we don't do it. We don't put any spacing afterward. So we're going to click on OK, OK, OK again, OK again. It's going to ask us if we want to replace the highlighted table of contents, and we do want to replace that one. Okay. So now we've fixed some things. We fixed this tab leader that's in the wrong direction. And we've fixed the fact that this long title is now single spaced, but we've got another problem that things aren't double spaced afterward. So let me show you quickly how to do that as well. And you probably are starting to see this process of what you're going to do. You can go to Table of Contents, Custom Table of Contents, Modify. We're going to modify TOC 1. And we're going to go to Format, Paragraph. So here's where we made it to single space. Now, depending on what font size you're using in your document, if you're using 12-point font, then you would want to have 6 points of spacing after the single space in the TOC 1 in order for that to be consistent throughout your document. If you're using 11-point font in your document, then you would choose 5.5. Again, I don't think that the grad school is going to be looking that closely to see if there's a half a point font size difference between the two. So you could just also just use 6-point font after it. But when you click on OK and click on OK all the way through this again, it's again going to ask you if you want to replace this table of contents, because you can only have one table of contents in a document, so we're going to say yes. And now we've got, oh, do you know what? I was wrong. It does need to be 12-point font after, because this is, yeah, my mistake. So it's a little too, the spacing in between these is not quite enough. All right, so you get to see the whole process again. Okay, modify, TOC1, modify. And you only have to do this once per, oops, you only have to do this once per document. Paragraph, this is going to be 12 points. Okay, 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 okay. Yes. All right, and now it looks right. And we've got our single space long title, and it's got an extra line space after it. All right. Now, if you want, so say that you've started this process, but then you're going through your writing, you add a whole bunch more text in, or maybe you add a brand new chapter, right? How do you update this? So if you, my right click is not working. I'm not sure what happened. So I guess I have to do a control click to get the options here. And so you want to update, and what you're looking for when I do you can either, depending on how your keypad, your mouse pad is set up, you can either do a right click or you can do a control click anywhere in the table of contents, and then it'll say update field. Update field is one of the options. And it gives you this option to either update the page numbers only or to update the entire table. Usually you would update the entire table, because if you change the chapter title, for example, or if you change the heading, or if you added something, then it's not going to be incorporated into the table of contents unless you update the entire table. So you can click on OK, and it would make any changes. The only time, I'm trying to think of when you would want to only update the numbers, but I can't think of a good reason when you'd want to do that. So generally, you're going to update the entire table. All right, so hopefully this will save you a lot of time, especially if you're at the beginning of writing, or if you haven't yet finished all of your text, then this is going to save a lot of time from like manually creating this by putting a whole bunch of periods and then like figuring out, okay, what page does chapter 2 start on, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we good? Any questions? All right, yes? Okay. In that case, what you need to, if you click on the word table of contents, you probably have it marked with heading style 1. Okay. And so it has to just be normal. Okay. Yep. Excellent question. Okay. So if we want to do the same kind of thing, so generally you will have like a bunch of figures, and so you'll have a list of tables. That so your committee members or the readers of your dissertation can click on the table of contents and go directly to that table. You'll generally have a list of all of your figures as well, and depending on what discipline you're in, you might have a list of schemes or a list of equations or a list of maps or whatever visuals you might have in your dissertation. So I'm going to show you next how we can create an automatically updating list of each of these different types of things. And you can do it for as many of them as you want. We're just going to do tables and figures because most people are just going to have one or two that they want to use. And so this now is, I've gone, when we were modifying everything, that's under all of this, other TOC. I'm going to make it so the camera can see it too. Other TOC tips. And now on the back of this, or on the second page, this is where it talks about lists of tables or figures, etc. And so, do you remember that? Well, let's go down to chapter 1. And I'm just going to scroll through chapter 1. And our figure 1.1 is on page, well, the way I have it in my dissertation is the figures are on the right side of the page, and the figure legends would be on the left side of the page. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the text that I want to appear in the list of figures. And to do that, we're going to do Alt, Shift, and the letter O. This is really, it's a cool thing that is like very well hidden inside of Word. So Alt, Shift, and the letter O. Oops, that did not work. Oh, I see, because in Mac, press Shift, Option. So there's 4 things you have to shift. All right, Control Z to stop that. All right, in Mac, press Shift, Option, Command, O. Shift, Option, Command, and the letter O. And when you do that, you get this marked table of contents entry. And so the first thing that shows is, so it's basically collected what I had highlighted, and that's going to be the entry. And then it asks, what table identifier do I want? I want to change it from table identifier C, because if I keep C, C stands for table of contents, and when I update my table of contents, if I mark it this way without changing that table identifier, then it's going to appear in my table of contents. And so instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick any other letter. And since we're doing tables, we'll do T. And you can just leave this at level 1 because you're not going to have different sub-levels in your list of tables. The other thing that I'm going to do, which will save a little bit of time right now, is see how everything's highlighted here and it's bold because it was bold back here in the document. I'm actually going to do a Command B to unbold it because I don't want it to appear as bolded text in the table of contents, or in the list of tables. So now that I've done those 3 things, I'm going to click on Mark, and then I can click on Close. And if you have the hidden characters showing, you'll see that it's done some like syntax showing that it's been marked as table identifier T level 1. If you deselect if you hide the non-printing characters, then that goes away. So that's just to confirm that when you print it, for example, when you create a PDF, that's not going to show up. But if you want to see which ones you've done, you can do that. All right, so now we're going to go down to the next figure. And I'm going to select the text, Shift, Option, Command, O. It brings the select text into this window. I'm going to press Control V, or Control B, excuse me, to unbold it. I'm going to change this to table identifier T, keep it at level 1, and mark, and then close. And now so you would do that with all of your figures. Oh, sorry, I was using the table. Okay, my brain's not working very well this morning. So I did T's for the figures, so we'll just have to remember that. You could also just change it right here to F in the syntax. But let's go up here to list of, all right, I'm actually just going to change this to, you would do different ones. So up here, this should be an F.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. And this one, I'm not sure. Actually, I'm just going to remove this and remark it with F. Shift, Option, Command, O. Command B to unbold it. This is going to be F. Sorry for the confusion. Mark. Oops, I marked it twice. Okay. All right, now if we go up to our list of figures, we've got a space for that. And if we put the cursor where we want it, we're going to go to References. And instead of choosing Table of Contents, because there can only be one table of contents, we're going to go to Insert Table of Figures. And we would do this whether it was a table of figures or a list of tables. And we are going to, so all of this is correct. We've got our tab leader right aligned, everything looks good. But we're going to go to Options here. And instead of using styles, we need to select that we're going to use table entry fields, and the table identifier is the one that we had just used, which is table F. So if we click on OK, and OK again, then our 2 figures that we marked are showing up here with the page numbers also showing up. And if I wanted to update this field, I would do it the same way. I would either do a control click or a right click Then I would click on Update Field, and you have the same options of whether you want to update the page numbers only or the entire table. So you could do this for all of them. Now, you might notice that this is single-spaced. You probably already know how you would fix this, right? You can go to Insert Table of Figures, Options, or excuse me, not Options, but to Modify. And this is our table of figures. We want to modify that. We want to make it either we could go to, probably the thing to do is actually not to make a double space, but do it like we did before, just in case we have any long figure titles and we want it to be single spaced between and double spaced after. Then we would choose single but 12 points of spacing after. Click on OK, 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 and OK again. And I think it's going to ask us if you want to replace the selected table of figures. The one that it has selected is the one that we're trying to overwrite, so click OK. Let's see, why did it do that? Update field. Oh, really? Control Z. Ah, interesting. Yeah, that may be some sort of a glitch. Okay, so, all right, yeah, when I did Command Z, it also went back to the double spaced. I'm not sure why it did that. What? Thanks for noticing the issue. Okay. Any questions about the list of figures? Let me show you. So we're doing really well for time. We're going to have time for Q&A if you guys have any issues that you are... okay, good. We're still recording. I just had a... All right. All right. We are going... So I just want to really quickly show you what happens when you create a second, when you mark your tables, for example. So remember that page that we turned? It was page 8 in chapter 1. Let's go to that page. And we're going to highlight this text and do a Shift, Option, Command, letter O. We're going to unbold that. And then we're going to use, this time we are going to use table identifier T. And mark that. And close. And we can go up here to List of Tables. And put the cursor where we want it to appear. We're going to use the same button. We're going to use we're going to insert table of figures, even though this is a table of tables. But you'll see now we're going to go to options, and we're going to identify that this particular list that we're going to create is using not table F, not table identifier F, but table identifier T. So this is where you can see that, like, if you're a math major or math PhD student and you had a bunch of equations, you might use figures, tables, and equations, and so you could choose a different table identifier for the equations or for maps or anything that you might use in your discipline. All right, so clicking on T, the only thing that's going to be different here is that this last box that comes up, it says, do you want to replace the selected table of figures? So it's now selected the one down here. It's saying it's selecting the list of figures that we made a few minutes ago. We don't actually want to replace that one. We want them to coexist in the same document. So be careful about not just pressing enter all the way through. So in this case, we're going to say no. And so now we have our list of tables. It has left unchanged the list of figures. And let's just make sure that the table of contents also looks normal. And again, you would update this the same way by Control-click or right-click, update field, and you can update anyone that you want. And I'm not sure if it updates. Let's see if it. Oops, not targets. That's not what I want to do. If you accidentally toggle the field things, the field controls, you can just. I clicked on the wrong thing. So toggling field codes makes it look like gibberish, and you're like, what did I do to my document? How do I get it back? And you can just toggle it back. This is doing it. Those field codes are some behind-the-scenes syntax that Word uses to to load your document.